Hi, welcome to Crosspoint Community Church. I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Brandon, and here's what you need to know this week.
If you're a first-time guest here, we'd just like you to know that here at Crosspoint, our mission here is to lead people to be passionate followers of Christ.
If you were wondering what those boxes were whenever you walked in, back there, that's TOM. Stands for Tithes, Offerings, and Missions. And this is how we take offering here at Crosspoint.
Don't forget to mark your calendars for November 11th, because that's when we start We Believe. We Believe starts right after service and lasts for 30 minutes. Anyone who has questions on faith, salvation, or baptism, or is interested in being baptized, don't forget to mark your calendars, November 11th.
Next week is Kid Stuff, starting at 6 o'clock with a pre-party at 5:45, and next week it is Trunk or Treat Kid Stuff. Trunk or Treat is kind of like Trick or Treat, but we do it right after the Kid Stuff service, and so we need everybody to come with a trunk full of candy and in their best Halloween costume. Hope to see you there.
Students, tonight is student takeover starting at 6 o'clock, but you can come out at 5:30 for some pizza and some hangout time. And we'll be wrapping up our series, YOLO, with Part 3, Legacy. We'll be seeing how our legacy is followed through Christ.
Today we continue our sermon series, Ghost Stories, with Part 3. And this time we felt we needed to make a few deliveries. Nothing mean, just deliveries.
What are you doing? You guys are not right.
Hey!
Wow, what's this all about?
I know, go check it out. It's
Is it a new
crazy.
refrigerator?
Paul.
What is it?
I knew you ripped something in that big box.
Brandon! 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 What is it? What is it?
What have you all done?
Nothing.
What the crap?
It's nothing about the school board.
Okay.
Okay, so, number one question.
Okay.
Turn around.
Well, that's all we got in the Need to Know this week. If you have any questions, you can stop out at the welcome table, or you can check out our website, crosspointonline.net, or you can check out our app. So see you all next week.
One cold, dark evening, the local drunk was stumbling out of the bar, making his way home. He decided to take a shortcut through the graveyard. He heard, "I need to get out of this grave." He started scrambling, walking a little quicker now. He fell into an open grave. He saw the shadowy figure at the other end. I need to get out of this grave. He was so scared, he scrambled up, finally got his hands on the top of the grave. He pulled himself up and ran home. What he didn't know is the gravedigger had dug the grave too deep and couldn't get out.
Good to see everyone. Welcome. My name is Brian Payne. I'm the Director of Small Groups Ministries here at Crosspoint, and it's just a delight to see everyone out this morning. Our mission here, just so you know, in case you hadn't heard it, is to lead people to be passionate followers of Christ. And one of the ways we feel like we do that is just by being a different kind of church, a church that says no matter what your thoughts are on God, no matter what kind of experience you've had with church or not in church in the past, it doesn't matter. The fact is that we're just glad you're here and want you to feel welcome. And if this is your first time being here with us, we want to extend a welcome to you and also say thank you and invite you to step outside when you leave out in the foyer there. There's a welcome center. Pick up a free gift from us, and it's just our way of saying thanks. One thing I do want to mention is directly after church today, after this service, about 10 minutes after service begins, 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to have our first partners meeting or gathering, whatever you want to call it. So if you're a partner, or if this, maybe you're not a partner, but you consider this your church home, we want to invite you to stay and take part of this brief meeting. It's probably going to last 20, 25 minutes, and we're going to cover some of our future plans that include our plans on our build-out in the other side of this building. Okay? So you'll want to stay and be part of that. If for some reason you can't make that, it's not a problem. We're going to have a brief summary of that meeting on November 11th in the service. But we do hope that you'll stay and take part of that. All right? Well, we're in our current series, Ghost Stories, and we're in part 3 today. All right? And then I'll be back a little bit later to close us out. Now I want to invite you to stand up. Get a big old stretch back and grab the person's head behind you and just give them a noogie, all right? Welcome to Crosspoint.
So in the church that I grew up in, they kind of had a set mark of spiritual maturity, of people who were deep in their faith. In the church that I grew up in, the mark of spiritual maturity was attendance at Sunday night church. Now, the church, there was about 400 or 500 people who came Sunday morning, and Sunday night church is when you really separated the heathens from the saints, because there were only about 100 of us that came from Sunday night church. And we believed all the rest were doing sinful activities like relaxing or hanging out with their family, things that we just didn't want to take part in because we were in church. And I have 2 distinct memories from Sunday night church growing up. The first one was Sunday night church was the time I got to bring my coloring book because I was younger. This is not recent, just to be clear. But I got to bring my coloring book to Sunday night church. Sunday morning church, I went back to children's church. But Sunday night church, there was nothing offered. And so I was told very importantly that my job was to stay awake and stay quiet, which it was funny because I had a coloring book, but I can remember looking around thinking, that's what most of the adults are just trying to do in here as well. They just don't have a coloring book. They're just all thrilled if they're awake and stay quiet. Don't get anything out of it, but just keep your eyes open, and then you fulfill your duties, and I don't know, you get more crowns in heaven or something like that. But I had my coloring book. I also learned something really significant with my coloring book, and it feels like it was an innocent mistake on my part. But one Sunday night, I colored in the hymnal, which I learned that was a no-no. But on my part, the reason why I thought this was okay is because if you went to restaurants, they gave you things to color with, and then they gave you like the black and white menu that had pictures on it that needed color. And so when we got in there and I sat in the pew, and there's a book that's black and white in front of me and had no color, I assumed that's what it's there for. This is like full service, it's lyrics, and it's for the children. So I colored in the hymnal and then learned that was not okay. So that was the first thing I remember. The second thing that I remember from Sunday night services is every once in a while we would have a testimony service. How many of you are familiar with the idea of a testimony service? Okay, if you're just brand new to church, testimony service, what would happen is it would always happen at this one part in the service is the worship would be going on, and then the pastor would be getting up to give his sermon, and then someone would stand up just somewhere in the congregation. And they just stand up and they say something like, "Preacher, I've got something I'd like to share." Pastor's like, "Okay, go ahead, share." And so they'd share a story of something that God had been doing in their life, or a prayer request that was answered, or something special, or something they read that week, and they kind of go on. And that happened a fair amount. But then like 3-4 times a year, it would kind of snowball. That the first person would stand up and they would be done, and the pastor would be like, "Okay, thank you." And then he'd go to take the next step, and someone else would stand up. I've got something to share too. And that's when you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh yeah, buddy, things are getting going. This is exciting." Now, the goofy part of it that I met as a kid, and many of you, if you grew up in this will be very familiar to you. Because if you're a kid, you have one goal during the testimony service. You have one thing that you're focused on. And you're watching the clock. Because our service started at 6 and it ended at 7. And we knew if testimonies ran past 6:50, that he was not giving his message. And so once the second testimony came and the third and the fourth came, we're sitting around and we're like looking around and we're like, "Oh, who looks like they got something to share? Like, are we going to get to skip the sermon tonight? Are we just going to hear stories?" And like you're as a little kid, you're like praying for people. "Lord, give them boldness. Let them stand and let them talk for 5 minutes." Because if it hits 6:52, we're getting out of here early and I don't have to even listen through anything. And so we go through that, and I can remember one time, the pastor just violated our agreement, or violated our unspoken agreement, because there had been like 6 or 7 testimonies and stuff like that. And he looked at his clock, and it was 6:50, and I looked at my clock, and it was 6:50. And "We both know what this means, buddy. You pray, and I'm going to Bob Evans, because that's how this works." And he goes, "Well, I'll go ahead and give you a quick message." It's like, darn it, someone else stand. Has nothing happened in your life? So that was kind of our testimony services. But the thing that I always remember, I really enjoyed this, because the services, they were very emotional. Like people sharing the stories of things that are going on in their life, it was very powerful. And I remember as we go out of the services, the language that people used was always the same. And there's always something along these lines of, "The Spirit really showed up tonight," or "The Spirit was really thick in that room." That's the language that we use. The Spirit was really thick in that room. And it created in me this idea that every single time there were significant emotions, or every single time there were tears, or something along those lines, that meant that the Spirit showed up. Because every single time that would happen, every single time emotions would be high in the room, or people would cry, or they'd give heartfelt pleas, whenever we walked out, they always used that term. It wasn't just, "Wow, that was emotional." It was, "Wow, the Spirit was really there tonight." And so that's the idea that it created in me. Now, the interesting part is, years later, when I was in college, I served for 2 years as a children's pastor in a church, which God have mercy on those kids' souls, because I don't know what happened during those 2 years that I was there. So just pray for them, because I don't know how they're going to turn out. But the fundraiser that we did as a church over and over was, they worked the concession stands at the Ohio State football game. And so they've been doing this for years, and so they said, "You need to come to this." So I said, "Yeah, that's fine. I'll come work concessions with you guys." So we're concessions. I'd never been in the Ohio State Stadium. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's shaped like a horseshoe. Like the stadium's really long, and it's closed like a horseshoe, and then it's got a small open area. And so the coolest spot in the stadium is if you're sitting in the open area, because you get to look at the closed part of the horseshoe in front of you. And so we're going in the stadium, and I had no idea where anything was. We get to our concessions place, and the thing was just packed, because it was the second game of the year, and it was the year that Ohio State was playing Texas. And one of them was ranked 2, and the other one was ranked 3. And so for the second game of the year, for this being a non-conference game, it was huge. So the place was absolutely packed out. So we're so busy doing concession stands and stuff like that. And they had told us at the beginning, "Hey, when your line dies down, when there's not much going on, you can go out and you can check out the stadium." And so I was in charge of hot dogs, so I'm throwing them in the buns, I'm doing my thing. I was a master at it in no time. And then our line was just empty. There was no one there. And I assumed we had no TVs around us. I assumed it must have been like halfway through the first quarter, the late people had entered in. And so I kind of made my way out, and I thought, I'll go check this out and see what's going on. And so I'm going through the tunnel, and it was there that I realized where our concession stand was. Because we are on field level. Like, our concession stand was on field level, and we are in the open end of the stadium. So as I'm walking out, I'm seeing the closed end of the horseshoe. So this thing is just massive in front of me. And one of the things Ohio State does in their pregame ceremony is they do script Ohio, where they write the word Ohio out in cursive. Are you impressed that I still remember my cursive? Because I usually write in all caps. I could do it again. Do it all day. There we go. And so they write out Script Ohio with the band, and then the last part of Script Ohio is one of the band members goes out and they dot the I. And this is the incredible, exciting moment that they go out and they dot the I and they do a thing, and then they bow, and the crowd goes nuts. And I'm not kidding. I am stepping out, and I can see the stadium, and the first thing I see is the band member dot the I. And the crowd just goes crazy. And I'm not contextualizing it here just because it's church. I mean, it was praise. It was worship. People were going nuts over what was happening. And I got to tell you, like, I got a little emotional. It was like, it was incredible. It was just overwhelming what I was feeling. It was almost the exact same feeling that I felt sitting in a Sunday night testimony service. The emotions were exactly the same. Now, here's the thing. I know it wasn't the Spirit working because it's Ohio State football. Pew, pew. But the interesting thing to me is I've had different experiences like that. Like sometimes we would take teens to camp, and we would take them to camp for a week. And teens are very emotional, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's what leads them to make such incredible, profound commitments at that stage in their life. But they're very emotional. It's very up and down. And I remember sitting through some services where I go, wow, the Spirit really moved. Like, I can tell that. The Spirit definitely moved tonight. And I can remember other nights where the teens would tell me the Spirit really moved. And I'd sit back there and I'd think, I don't know if it did. I think it might just be the fact that it's the last night of camping. You're about to say goodbye to all your friends, and you're very emotional, and you're very tired. Now I didn't tell them that. I went, yes, the Spirit moved. Mm-hmm. Or something along those lines. But there was this sense, even in people who were grown up, that it was every single time something's emotional, every single time there's tears, that means the Spirit moved. Now, this can create a very significant problem for us, is because if we believe that, if we believe every single time emotions are high that the Spirit moves, what happens is, first of all, is we don't pursue Christ, we pursue emotional experiences because it makes us feel good. And if we think every single time there's tears or every single time emotions are high, that means the Spirit is present and that means the Spirit is working, then we end up pursuing not a life that follows Christ, not a life that honors Christ, but simply emotional experiences. The other thing that's really important about this is that if you're here, and this is probably more likely to the guys, but I'm sure there's a few ladies who fall into this, and you're not an emotional person, like you're just not a crier, that's not you. Bethany still gets mad at me that I didn't cry in our wedding. I was like, I don't know what you wanted me to. My best man cried in our wedding, so I don't know if she was looking for like a late game swap or something like that. Like, he's tears, he's in. And I was like, I'm sorry, that's just not me. I'm just not a big crier. But if that's you and you're not a very emotional person, it could lead you to believe that the Spirit isn't working in your life, that the Spirit isn't present. And that for those who are highly emotional, that means the Spirit is always working in their life. See, this is very important for us because if we believe, and I do, but if we believe that the Spirit gives us power and the Spirit is incredibly important, then we had better know what is the evidence of the Spirit working. We had better be very, very clear as to how we know the Spirit is working in our lives. And so that's what I want to look at today. If you have your Bible, I want you to open it up to Galatians chapter 5. If you have a Bible on your phone, I want to encourage you to open it to Galatians chapter 5. We are just going to look at one passage today, and I want you to be able to follow along and know where it is. If you don't have either of those, the words are going to be on the screen behind me. But in this passage, I'm not going to give you much background. This is the Apostle Paul writing to the church in Galatia, and he's just going to show them, hey, this is how you live. And in the midst of that conversation, in the midst of that discussion that he's having with them, he's showing them this is how you know the Spirit is at work. So here we go. This is Galatians chapter 5, and we're going to start with verse 16. And he starts with this. He says, so I say, live by the Spirit. I think that's really important. I want to pause right there. He says, live by the Spirit. We talk about being filled with the Spirit. We talked last week about being transformed by the Spirit, of being sent out, pushed out of our comfort zone, out of our security, out of the places where we think are safe, so that we'll be transformed and made more into the image of Christ. But he says right here, live by the Spirit. And this is important because normally we think of the Spirit's work in terms of the filling of the Spirit as an action in that moment, single-time things. But he's saying live, like every day. Like your life. Not just part of your life, but all of your life. Live by the Spirit. And he continues. And you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature. And he says, for the sinful nature desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the sinful nature. Now, I don't mean this as like dualism, like these are equal forces, but he's saying that there are two forces, there are two desires at work within you. There's a sinful nature, and there is the Spirit. And these are not like outside things, and so this is the goofy analogy, and I don't actually believe this, but we've all seen the cartoon illustration of the angel and the devil, and they're on your shoulder, do this, no, don't do that, not bad, do this. We're familiar? You're all looking at me with really blank stares. Okay, there we go. Kind of, yes, somewhat nods. Some people think I'm crazy, but it's somewhat comparable to that. They're saying there are two desires within you, and then what he says next is he says they are in conflict with each other, so that you do not do what you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under law. Now, I want to clarify this, even though I think this should be somewhat obvious. You have two desires in you. One is to do what's wrong, and one is to do what's right. That is very important that we're aware of that. Because the most common advice that I hear people give to other people today when it comes to decisions in their life is do what makes you happy. That is horrible advice. Because some of the things that are going to make you happy are going to be wrong. And you should not do them. You should follow the Spirit. Like there are some times you're going to be so mad, you're going to want to kill someone. It's just going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, that means you're not married. But it's going to happen. And here's the thing. Ready? This is your takeaway if you get nothing out of the message. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because it's wrong. But we all understand that there are two desires that are within us. I've used this example before, but I feel this over and over again. I feel this pull. I feel this tug just about, I'd like to say not that much, but just about every time my wife asks me to do something. Because I think I don't want to do that. Why does she always ask me to do that? And sometimes she'll even say, Kevin, and I'll think, I didn't hear my name. I didn't hear my name. If I hold my ears, maybe she'll think I didn't hear my name. And what usually happens, I usually do it, because I know I should do it. Now I usually do it. Like lots of grumbling, I'm not happy, but I feel that every time that happens. I feel these two desires at work within me. Now, this is what he does, is he gets specific when it comes to the sinful desire. And this is going to be a little awkward, and I just want you to be ready for that. So verse 19, he says, the acts, A-C-T-S, the acts of the sinful nature are obvious. And then he lists them. Sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Now, this is the problem that I have with that list. Is orgies is in the same line as envy. Jealousy is in the same sentence as witchcraft. Hatred is in the same sentence as witchcraft. Like, I don't believe I've practiced much witchcraft in my day. Like, when the Ouija game board came out, like, my parents didn't even let that in our house because that was way too close. And so that never came in. But I have hated some things. Like, if this is confession time, I hate the San Francisco Giants. Like, right now, I hate them because we should have won in 3, swept them, move on, pounced on the Cardinals, and I should have been watching my Reds play last night. Like, I hate the San Francisco Giants. But I have not engaged in any witchcraft. But he puts that in the same list. And this is why he does. It's because they all lead to the same place. And I don't even mean hell. I mean your destruction. I mean, if jealousy is a part of your life, it's not going to stay a small part of your life. It's going to begin to take over who you are. And so while the saying is that all sins are equal in God's eyes, and I believe that, because they'll all lead to the same place. Now, some of them will lead there faster than others. Some of them will lead to your destruction much quicker. You'll get the fast pass to your own destruction. But they all lead to the same place, and that's why they're here. Now, he says these are the acts. These are the external things, the actions that we take part of that are evidence of a sinful nature. So we know where we all stand. I'm going to read through this again. And I want you to take an account of your own life, just a quick mental inventory, and go, okay, where is this in my life? What am I struggling with? Now, side notes on this. Don't raise your hand as we go through the list. Don't bump your neighbor. This is for you. And I just want to show us that, hey, the sinful nature, it's a part of us. So here's the list. The acts of the sinful nature are obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. As a side note, and this is not a good joke, but I really believe this. What's the like? Like orgies and the like? He said orgies. What is he not naming in this list? That just, there's a, like, what are those people doing? Sorry, continuing on. My bad. And then he gives the other side of this. He says this. He says, but the fruit of the Spirit is. Now this is what I think is so interesting about his writing, is he says, these are the acts of the sinful nature. These are the external things that you do. But then he says there is a fruit of the Spirit. Now, I have not and plan on never being a tree. But this is not how I imagine that it works. Like, I don't think trees are up there if they think, which, whatever, I wasn't a biology major, I didn't pay attention in science, whatever. I don't think they're there going like, Lord, help me grow apples. Please, Father, give me apples. Help me to resist the desire to not grow apples. Please, Lord, apples. Apples. Lord, we pray your mercy rains upon us. Give us actual rain, and we want apples. Like, I don't think the tree is doing that. I don't think the tree is laser focused on apples. Apples, this is what we want. Apples. No. It just naturally does it. When a tree is healthy, it grows fruit. Now, what kind of a tree does an apple tree grow? Tree. Fruit. Does an apple tree grow? Go ahead, say. Apples. Great. What kind of a fruit does a pear tree grow? Great. We're fantastic. You go home. Yeah, it grows pears. It grows what's natural to it. It doesn't have to focus. It doesn't have to strain. It's natural. It's part of the tree being healthy. And so he says here, the fruit of the Spirit, that if you live by the Spirit, that this is the fruit. This is not the thing that you focus on. This is the natural byproduct of living by the Spirit. And this is what he says. But the fruit of the Spirit is warm, mushy feelings, lots of tears, campfire sing-alongs of Kumbaya followed by very emotional commitments to purity. All right? That's what we think, isn't it? I mean, that's what we say when we say the Spirit moved. That's what we're talking about. This is what he actually says. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. That if you live by the Spirit, notice it doesn't say acts. It says fruit. It's not talking about acts of peace. You become peaceful. It's not acts of kindness. You become kind. That it shifts from an external focus of these are the things we do to this is who I am. I'm love, I'm joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, I want to bring us back for 1 second to verse 22, because this is important. And I'm going to enunciate very clearly. It says, but the fruit. You see, how we usually read that is we read it as fruits of the Spirit. And we view it as almost this grab bag, as this massive list of these are all the things that I need to choose from. And so I'm good at kindness, but I need to work on patience. I'm good at faithfulness, but I need to work on self-control. No, that's not what he's saying. And this is why that's so important, is because merely because of your personality, just who you are, you're going to be good at some of those things. Some of us are just naturally kind. Some of us are just naturally patient. And just because one of those is in your life doesn't mean that the Spirit is working in you. If I can make it really clear, and this is an extreme exaggeration, but I believe it's true. Didn't Hitler have self-control? Right? If you read anything on him, he is one of the most self-disciplined people there are. But he wasn't kind. And so we wouldn't say because I have self-control, I've got the Spirit working in my life, because that's just not true. And so this is not, well, I've got peace, but I need to work on gentleness. No, he's saying that if the Spirit is working in your life, all of these become present. Now here's where we usually get it off, is if you need kindness, you do not focus on kindness. You focus on living by the Spirit. If you are not very gentle, you don't focus on gentleness. If you don't have much love in your life, you don't focus on love. You focus on the Spirit, and the fruit comes out in your life. And this is what we see. The evidence of the Spirit working has nothing to do with your emotions. The evidence of the Spirit working has nothing to do with a feeling. It's the fruit in your life. Now, for some of you, that's really freeing. Because you've sat next to people who had incredibly emotional experiences, and you think, why doesn't God move in my life like that? And that's not, I'm not saying that God doesn't work. I'm not saying God doesn't work through our emotions. I'm not saying when the Spirit moves that we don't feel something. I'm just saying let's not use that as the litmus test for the Spirit's work. We saw last week, we said that the Spirit, the number one goal, the focus that the Spirit has is transformation, that the Spirit will send us out, move us out of our comfort zones so that we'll be transformed, so that we'll rely on Him and be made in the image of Christ. And he's saying that the evidence of the Spirit's work is that you're changed, is that you're transformed, is that you become someone else. Now, for me, that's a breath of fresh air, because I no longer pursue emotional experiences. I no longer worry about who's crying and who's not. It's okay for the last night of camp for everyone to break down in tears just because they're missing their friends. That's okay. But I gauge the Spirit's work on the fruit in their life. And then he says this. I love how he closes this out. Verse 24, he says, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. That's an incredibly important verse. We're not going to jump into it today because the whole next series we're going to do is about that. And so I'm not glossing over it because it's not important. It's incredibly important. And so we're going to spend a whole series on that. But then he says this, 25. Since we live by the Spirit. He's kind of bookended his teaching with that. He starts with, so I say live by the Spirit. And then he ends it with, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. He makes it so much clearer. He says, not filled, not transformed, not saved. We live by the Spirit. And then he almost takes it to another level to make it even more clear. Let us keep in step with the Spirit. I love, this is the Message translation of the Bible and what they say on it, and it'll be on the screen behind me. He says this, since this is the kind of life we have chosen, the life of the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail of our lives. Let's not just hold it as an idea or a good, warm feeling, but let's work it out in every detail of our lives. And I kind of figured out a little more recently in terms of what that means of work it out in every detail. A couple weeks ago, we went back to Pittsburgh to visit where my extended family's from. And me and my cousin, who's about the same age as me, we're almost identical, and I'll give you the stupid family history if you don't know that. And I promise this is not incest, which if you have to say that at the start, it's never good. But I promise this is not incest. My dad's brother married my mom's sister. Got that? So I've got uncles and aunts on both sides who like come to everything in the family. So we're double family or whatever. Again, not illegal. We're good. It's cool. No one's tracking us down or anything. So that's the case. So my cousin, who's like 10 months older than me, like we're the same. We look the same. His kids kept coming up to me and calling me daddy, and his kids are like 4 and stuff like that because we look the same, we act the same. We're very, very similar. So we're going to go on a bike ride, me and my dad and my cousin and my uncle, which is his dad. And so we're going to go out, and we're going to ride bikes. And me and my cousin, we've been very equal in everything we've done physically throughout our entire lives. And so we're going out, and I don't know what you call it. I call it a bike ride because that brings me back to like my 4th grade self because that's exciting. You may call it cycling or a road trip or I don't know what language you use. But you want to go on a bike ride? Yeah, let's go on a bike ride and honking our horn and blowing our bells. That just excites me. Putting the baseball cards in the spokes so it sounds like a motorcycle. Some of you know what I'm talking about. There we go. There, thank you. So we go out, and it was really interesting to me because he was way better than me. Like, we went out on these trails and stuff like that, and then we had to ride up this hill that I thought I was going to die on. And he was so much faster than me. He was so much better than me. And the difference is that I just rode my bike. He was a cyclist. Like, I just liked the idea of riding my bike. I enjoyed it. He had worked out the implications into every detail of his life. To give you some of the differences, I have one bike that works. I have a couple bikes, but I have one bike that works. He has like 5 nice bikes that work. I have the helmet that I bought at Walmart. I did not realize that there were better helmets. I thought they were just there to protect your head. They're like, oh, you get this, and it's lighter, and it does that. And I sat there thinking, like, it's lighter? Like, how good do you think I am? I think if I wore a motorcycle helmet, it wouldn't affect my performance at all. But he's like, you got to do this because it's lighter. My cousin wears the fancy butt pad shorts. I'm familiar with that. And in fact, the day that we went out riding, it was really cold. And so he had this like tight spandex tights that had the butt pads in the bottom. And I wore gym shorts or I wore sweatpants. And that's about as fancy as I get. And the other thing is he was sitting on the couch and he had his feet up on the ottoman. And I was kind of looking at him like, something's not right. And I realized I was checking out his legs. I looked at him and I said, Danny, do you shave your legs? Yeah. Danny, why? do you shave your legs? And he went on this like whole spiel of how wind resistance, first of all. Resistance, really? You have a goatee, but wind resistance? We're worried about the wind on our legs, and not on our face and stuff. And then the other thing, and this kind of made sense, is he rides out on a bunch of trails up in the mountains and stuff, and he says when you fall, which apparently he falls a lot, but that when you fall, it's a pain to like pick all the gravel out of your hair, where if you shave your legs, you can basically just dump water on it and wipe it off, and it's good to go. And I was like, oh, okay, how about that? And he looked at me and he said, do you shave your legs? I went, no, I'm just actually naturally hairless. It's kind of how I came into the world. It's how I plan on coming out of the world. I don't even have to bother with that step. Should have been a swimmer because shaving legs, no worries in my life. But here's the difference that I realized between us. My cousin has worked out the implications of being a cyclist into every detail of his life. And so he really is. He's a cyclist. I ride my bike. I think it's fun. I like the idea. I enjoy it. But I'm nothing more than that, than someone who rides his bike. And I think that's where many of us are in faith, in terms of that disconnect. Some of us have worked out the details in every implication of our lives, and we've stretched it into every portion, everything that we are, and our faith becomes who we are. For others of us, we like the idea. And we like how it makes us feel. And we think it's a good thing. But we don't go any further than that. And he's saying, if you're really going to live by the Spirit, if you want to keep in step, if you want the fruit of the Spirit in your life and to live under that power, you have to work the implications into every detail. Now, this is what he does next, and this is so interesting, is he says that. So this is back to the NIV, not the Message. He says, let us keep in step with the Spirit. And then he calls out their sin. And he says, let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other, which was the cardinal sins that this church was committing. They were very prideful. They were very envious of those around them. And so he says, let us keep in step with the Spirit. And then he basically says, this is how you're not doing it. So I have accumulated for us today a list of our top 10 sins. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. And I'm not going to do that. And this is why. Because you're smart. And you know where you haven't worked the implications into the detail of your lives. You know the areas of your life where you've kept for yourself and you've not, I'm not saying this harshly, but refused to surrender them over to God. You're aware of that. And so you don't need me to say that to you. And I also believe this, that if you're unclear on that, if you're a little fuzzy on what that is, I believe if you pray to the Spirit, that He'll reveal that to you. And that's a far more important step than me telling you this is what you're struggling with. The other side of that is that then I would have to open it up for you to reveal to me how I struggle with that. And that's not a route that I want to go down. So we'll just leave it at that. But I believe you know this. I believe you know where you haven't worked it out. And I also believe this. I believe that you want to do that. I believe you want for your faith, not just to be an idea in your head or a sentiment in your heart, but I believe that you want it to stretch into every part of you and who you are. And here's the thing. If you do that, if you focus on that, two things are going to happen. The first thing that's going to happen is that your desire, your agenda for your life, the things of this is what I'm going to do, this is what I want to do, these are the things that all need to happen at this time frame, it's going to change. And it's going to shift off of, if we could say it like this, your little speck of dust in terms of your significance in the universe, of this is who I am and this is how much I matter in the stretch of eternity, and it's going to shift off of your agenda and onto the agenda of the one who created the universe. You see, there's a big difference between praying, God bless my day, and God use my day for however you see fit. Those are light years apart. Both prayers important, but they show a very different focus in who you are. And so I believe the first thing that happens if you do this is your agenda is going to shift off of your life and shift onto God and what he's doing. And the second thing that's going to happen is you're no longer going to operate under your own power, but you're going to operate under his. Because this is what's going to happen, is it talks here in your faith, not as a big decision that you make, but more akin to a moment-by-moment leading. The best metaphor I've heard for it is that faith it's not a one-time decision. It's more like a dance where the Spirit steps and we follow. And the Spirit steps this way and we follow that way. And what's going to happen if you pay attention to that, if you focus on that, is the Spirit is going to lead you to do some things that are uncomfortable. Going to lead you to talk to some people and to go some places and to form some relationships and to make some sacrifices that you would have never made on your own. And he's using it to grow you. But what is going to happen is going to lead you to do things that you would never be able to do under your own power. And what's going to happen is you're going to have to rely on him. And you're going to have to live in his power. Now, I just want you to hear this. That life of working out the implications, of keeping in step with the Spirit, is hard. And there's no bones about it. I remember growing up in the youth group, we'd always laugh because when we'd go to camps or anything like that or any retreat, I always had a friend who was a fellow cynic with me. And the guy would get up there at the end and he'd be like, we offer you this free gift. Jesus gives you this free gift. And we lean over like, yeah, they're just not telling people that it's going to cost them their entire lives. We leave that part out. And that's part of it. It really is. That's part of it. And so I want you to know, this is hard. This is difficult. But this is what I believe, and this is the promise that I have for you. It's better. It's better than anything else you could do with your life. It's more challenging. It has far more sacrifice. But it is far better than any other way that you could live your life. And so my hope, my prayer for you, is that you won't just be filled with the spirits, but that you will keep in step, working out the details into every implication of your lives. And when you do that, you'll know the Spirit's working by the fruit in your life. Let me pray for you. Lord, I want to pray for those who are here today, specifically for their courage. Father, I pray that the parts of their life that they know they have not surrendered over to you, the parts of their life, whatever it is, that whether it's because of fear, whether it's because of past experiences, whatever it is that they've gone, I don't know about this, Lord. I don't know if I can give this to you. God, I pray for courage. That our faith would not be a thing in our heads or a warm feeling, but that our faith would become who we are. That we would be defined by it. That we would see every action, every step in light of that. And God, we trust you. We trust you to lead us where we do not know where we're going. Father, we trust you to lead us when it seems dark in front of us. Because we know your way's better. Not easier, but better. And I pray this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Spirit. Amen.
In your small groups this week, you're going to talk a little bit about keeping in step with the Spirit. And our prayer for you today is that as you live in the Spirit, that you walk in the Spirit by taking the implications of the Spirit and working those out in every aspect of your life. Thank you for being here today. God bless you. You're dismissed. And remember, our partners meeting 10 minutes start right after service.